This is Professor Bittner, and today we're going to go through a short tutorial about counting chromosomes. So chromosomes can be represented in a lot of different ways. And at the top of your screen you see just basically a line with a dot in the middle, and sometimes that's how a chromosome is drawn in its unreplicated form. The line represents a double helix, so a double strand of DNA that's spiraling, but it's just drawn as a simple line. And then the dot represents the centromere, which is a special point on the chromosome where the spindle fibers will attach during cell division. So an unreplicated chromosome is sometimes referred to as a monad chromosome. So monad would be spelled M-O-N-A-D. Now below you have a chromosome after replication, so a chromosome in the replicated form. It still contains just one centromere, but there are two what are called chromatids that make up this chromosome. And so this chromosome is still counted as one chromosome, but it's a dyad chromosome. So monad form and dyad form. That's another way of just saying unreplicated chromosome or replicated chromosome. So a dyad is a replicated chromosome, a monad is an unreplicated chromosome. Now here is a pair of chromosomes, a pair of homologous chromosomes, and it's shown in the unreplicated form. So two of the same type of chromosome in the unreplicated form, and below is a pair of chromosomes but shown in the replicated form. So for example, the chromosome on the left maybe came originally from your mom, and the chromosome on the right originally came from your dad. But the chromosomes can exist either as monads, and that depends on the phase of the cell cycle, and they can also exist as dyads. So when we use the term a pair of chromosomes, we mean a pair of homologous chromosomes. We never mean a pair of sister chromatids, because a pair of sister chromatids, two sister chromatids make up just one dyad chromosome. So when we say a pair of chromosomes, we mean two separate chromosomes. And so we need to be clear on what we mean by a pair of chromosomes versus a pair of chromatids. And we also need to be clear on what we mean by a set of chromosomes. So the word set might give you a little bit of trouble, but one thing it does not mean is pair. And we'll elaborate on that in a minute. Now when you're counting chromosomes, you always count centromeres. So in this picture, you see a cell that contains 4 chromosomes. And the way I know it's 4 is I count the centromeres. Imagine that dot in the middle of each of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4 chromosomes. So this cell contains 4 chromosomes, and the chromosomes in this picture are shown in the dyad form. All right. So these are dyad chromosomes, or replicated chromosomes, and they each count as 1. So that's why I say there's 4 chromosomes. If we had unreplicated chromosomes, you would count each unreplicated chromosome as 1, because it also has 1 centromere. So the rule is when you count chromosomes, you count centromeres. That tells you how many chromosomes there are. So this cell contains 4 replicated chromosomes. It also contains 2 pairs of chromosomes because the large blue and the large red make up 1 pair of homologous chromosomes, and the small red and the small blue make up another pair of homologous chromosomes. So we have 2 pairs of homologous chromosomes. So this is a pair, and this is a pair of chromosomes. Now, we also have chromosome sets, and sets of chromosomes are different than pairs. A set of chromosomes would mean one set would be a single copy of each kind. So in this cell you have a big chromosome and a little chromosome that make up a set. And the other big and little make up the other set. All right? So let's do that again. A pair are 2 that are alike. So we have this pair and this pair. But a set is different. A set would be 1 of each type. So we have, this would be a set, and this would be a set. And so those are different concepts, pairs and sets. So let's talk about this again. What is a set of chromosomes? What does that mean? It doesn't mean a pair. Sometimes I like to use an analogy to trading cards. Now, I'm a child of Star Wars. I grew up in the 80s. So Star Wars was a huge deal, the original Star Wars. And here we had trading cards. It had the different characters of Star Wars. I think if you found these now, they'd be worth quite a bit. I don't have this, but I found this picture online. All right, so imagine you owned these cards. You have 1 Luke Skywalker, 1 Han Solo, 1 Princess Leia, 1 Chewbacca, etc. And let's say all of these, so there's 11 cards, makes up the full set. So that means if you have 1 of each different kind, you have a full set. All right, so a full set contains 1 of each different kind, 1 of each different character. Now, if you had 2 sets, that would be a lot. You'd have 2 full sets of 11 cards each. So you'd have these 11 over here, which has 1 of each type. That's 1 set. Here's 1 set. And here's the second set. 2 sets. Now, what's a pair? Let's go back to that. A pair of chromosomes would just be 2 of the same type. So 2 Darth Vader cards would be a pair of cards, sorry. But this is analogous to a pair of chromosomes, 2 of the same type, not connected. They're not sister chromatids, but they're 2 of the same. That's a pair. So you see how a pair is much smaller than a set? If you had, let's say that you sold, let's say you were on eBay and you sold 2 full sets. You posted on eBay that you had 2 sets of Star Wars cards. Then what the buyer is expecting to get is this, 2 sets. And if you mailed them this, 2 cards, they'd be pretty mad. Because what you mailed them was a pair, which is 2 cards, not 2 full sets. Okay? So, or if you promised them 1 set and you just sent them a pair, they would still be angry. Okay, so a pair is just two of the same type, but a set is one of every different kind. And two sets would be two of every different kind. So the number of sets in a cell is called the ploidy of the cell. Chromosomes can only be replicated or unreplicated, but cells have ploidy. So that's an important concept. So a chromosome cannot be called diploid because a chromosome cannot contain full chromosome sets. How can one chromosome contain a whole set of chromosomes? That doesn't make sense. But a cell can contain full sets of chromosomes. So a cell has ploidy. So if a cell contains two full sets of chromosomes, then the cell is called diploid. So a diploid cell contains two complete sets of chromosomes. In humans, each set of chromosomes is 23 different chromosomes. So like 23 different trading cards. And two sets would be 23 and another 23. So 46 in a single cell would be a diploid cell. And if you had a triploid cell, then that cell could contain 3 sets of chromosomes, and that's possible. It's not the most common thing in humans. It's not viable for an embryo to be triploid, but in some species it is viable. So you don't want to limit yourself when you're thinking about these things that it has to be a certain way. Most organisms do have diploid cells, but there are organisms that have monoploid cells, cells that only have one set of chromosomes. There are organisms that have triploid or tetraploid cells. So ploidy is a state or a description of how many sets of chromosomes are in the cells of that organism. So here's a drawing of a cell, and I wrote here, this cell contains 2 sets of chromosomes. Okay, 2 sets. So typically I'll ask a student, circle 1 set. So I need my pen. So there's 2 of these medium-sized chromosomes, 2 of the large chromosomes, 2 of the curly chromosomes, and 2 of these short ones down here. So there's 2 of each type, and a set is 1 of each type. So I'm going to circle, if I'm going to circle 1 set, the easiest way to do that would be to circle that. So that would represent a set. 1 large, 1 medium, 1 curly, and 1 short and straight, I guess. Now the other set, which is going to be harder to circle, is going to be the other long, the other medium, the other curly, and the other short and straight. There, I circled it. So those are your 2 sets in this drawing. Now I want to point out that this is 2 sets of chromosomes. The chromosomes themselves happen to be in a monad form. But whether or not the chromosomes are in the monad form or the dyad form, that doesn't have anything to do with how many sets are in the cell. In fact, on the next slide, this cell still contains 2 sets of chromosomes. So 2 medium, 2 large, 2 short and straight, and 2 curly. So this is still just 2 sets of chromosomes. Here I'm going to circle 1 set again. And then I'm going to circle the other set, which is a little harder to do. So those are your 2 sets. But it just so happens that in this picture, the chromosomes are shown in the dyad form. But whether the chromosomes are monads or dyads, that doesn't influence how many sets there are. Okay. So then you get to a question that sometimes will be asked. What's the diploid number of this cell? Now, pay attention. This is very important. the term diploid number, what that means is how many chromosomes are in or make up two sets. What's the total number of chromosomes? If you have two sets of chromosomes, how many is that? So think about humans. The diploid number of humans is 46. That means that every diploid cell contains 46 chromosomes. All right? The haploid number would be the number of chromosomes in one set. So in humans, that would be one set. It has 23 chromosomes. But the diploid number means how many chromosomes make up two sets. Now in humans, it's 46, but in this cell, assume this is not human. This could be Drosophila, because Drosophila have this number of chromosomes. So you have two long chromosomes, two medium, two short and straight, and two curly. So how many chromosomes do you have? 8. You have 8 chromosomes. Are there two sets? Yes. I've already circled them for you. I think you can get that. So there's two sets of chromosomes in this cell, and there's 8 chromosomes in this cell. So the diploid number is 8. Simply, how many chromosomes are in two sets? 8. Now, what's the diploid number of this cell? Still 8, because there are still two sets of chromosomes and there are still 8 chromosomes. The fact that the chromosomes in this picture are shown as dyads still doesn't change the number of chromosomes. These are just dyad chromosomes, but there's still 8 chromosomes here. So the form of the chromosome, whether it's a monad or a dyad, does not affect the diploid number of the cell. Okay, so here are the way some of these questions will appear to you on lab quizzes and lecture exams and such, on the homework. It starts off with, what's the diploid number of a species if you observe a cell from that species in metaphase 1 and it has 12 chromosomes? Well, you have to know that metaphase 1 in meiosis, a cell in metaphase 1 is still a diploid cell. And if that cell has 12 chromosomes, then that means there are 12 chromosomes in a diploid cell, and that's the definition of diploid number, so the answer is 12. Okay? So if they give you the number of chromosomes in a diploid cell, then that is the diploid number, because the definition of diploid number is the number of chromosomes in a diploid cell. Now, what if they give you this question? What's the diploid number of a species if a cell from that species in prophase 2 has 14 chromosomes? Well, the trick here is that prophase 2 is a haploid cell. In meiosis, by the end of telophase 1, each cell is haploid. So when you go into prophase 2, the cell is still haploid. So if 14 chromosomes are in a haploid cell, what would be the number of chromosomes in a diploid cell? 28. Now, this question, you really have to think through your events of cell division. What's the diploid number of a species if a cell from that species is in anaphase 2 and that cell has 20 chromosomes? Now, a cell in anaphase 2 will have monad chromosomes. And that's one of the tricks, is that you have to be very clear about which phases of cell division have which forms of chromosomes. And you also have to be clear which phases of cell division are diploid cells and which are haploid cells. But knowing that an anaphase 2 cell has monad chromosomes, but that an anaphase 2 cell has a doubled number of chromosomes compared to a metaphase II cell. A metaphase II cell is a haploid cell with dyad chromosomes. An anaphase II cell has monad chromosomes. So these 20 chromosomes in monad form were previously 10 chromosomes in dyad form. If you backtrack, if you think backwards from anaphase II, go backwards to metaphase II, 20 chromosomes in the monad form is really 10 chromosomes in the dyad form. But metaphase II is a haploid cell, so then you double that number and the answer is 20. Or there's another way you could get to the same answer of 20. If you think about, in anaphase II, the chromatids have been pulled apart and are now counted as individual chromosomes. So you have 10 monad chromosomes that are being moved to the left of the cell, 10 being moved to the right, so that each gamete will end up with 10 chromosomes, and that's a haploid number. So the diploid number is double. So these are some of the chromosome counting problems that you are going to be asked to do, similar to this. So it's critical that you understand the difference between the word pair and set. You understand what ploidy means, and you understand what monads and dyads are. So be sure that you are very clear on these things. If not, please ask questions.